All right, guys, here we go. Justin Prince, man, I'm so excited to have you with us here today. And just to give you a quick intro, Justin's the number one networker in the world, empire builder, and the author of the book, Be the One. But more than anything else, Justin, to me, you're a master of connection, impact, and empowerment. And I could not be more excited to have you in the studio, man.
Well, first of all, brother, appreciate that you're doing this. Just the value you're going to add for so many people, and we've had kind of a cool relationship over the years, and just kind of cheered each other on from afar and supported each other. And so to see this next kind of chapter as your so lift others up concept, I think is really powerful. So I'm excited to watch you bring this to life.
Awesome. Thank you, man. So, a couple of things I want to touch on real quick, just from the outset. I mentioned the book you authored. I got it right here, man, front and center. Be the One. And I'll tell you what, when I read, I highlight, I dog ear, I do all those things. And in preparation for this podcast, and not only did I listen to the book again on Audible, I went and I listened to a couple of your podcasts, one with Ray Higdon, one with Dan McCormick, and then I went and found Eric Worre when you were on his podcast,
Yeah.
and did some other research as well, including I never heard of Nathan Ricks, which we'll get into in a second. But in one of those podcasts, I heard you say that great books, you read it and you say, that was a great book. And then there's life-changing books that you read and you share with other people.
Yeah.
And so I just want to tip my hat to you because this is more than a great book. This is a life-changing book. And I've already shared it. We'll continue to share it with other people. So anything you want to share
dude. I
about
appreciate
Be the
that.
One?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That means a lot. Anyone that's written a book knows it's a labor of love to get those all the way across the line. And Be the One for me is really two concepts. The first is that you're the one. So if you think about your parents and grandparents and great grandparents over the last 12 generations, it was 4,094 people. So 4,094 people from all over the world came together to create you. And you are the one. You are the one these folks lived for, bled for, cried for, died for, gave everything they had for. So success is an identity process, and you're never going to outperform the way you see yourself. If you see yourself as a loser, you won't play like a winner. And if you see yourself as a winner, you're not going to roll over and quit like a loser. So much of success is identity. When you realize I'm the one, like I'm the one for my family, and that your life has value and purpose and meaning. So the book is not called Become the One. The book is Be the One, meaning you are the one. That's you. That's like in essence, the calling in your life. Your life matters. The concept though is to be, right? So be the one you were born to be, and be the one that lives a life, be the one that writes a story that future generations look up in their family lineage and they're like, it was him or it was her. It was my great 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 grandma. She's the one that changed it forever for us, or my great 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 grandpa. And so that's really the concept. And it's, to me, it's a book that I hope it motivates somebody, but really I hope it teaches, gives strategies and frameworks and formulas and the things that have helped me go from, a kid with no college education, came from a broken home at age 12, moved 13 times in the 7 years to the teenage years, first business failed, to, building multiple multi-million dollar businesses and doing, billions of dollars in revenue and, traveling around the world and doing that whole thing. So I'm hoping I can share some of these things that I've learned on this journey that will be beneficial and helpful to help you go from where you are to where you really want to be.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, obviously we want people to go get the book, and there's no way we could cover the whole thing here, but there's a couple things I would love for you to share. And you already kind of hit the first one. Success is an identity process. And my note here is 1480 because you share an awesome story about that test score. I'd love for you to share that. And just before you do, identity is something I've struggled with my whole life. I remember one of the first books I read was The Invisible Man by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And I can't even remember what the book's about, but I wrote inside the cover identity question mark. And so from a very early age, I've always kind of questioned that. And this is such a cool story of how your identity can be shaped and changed. So can you share that story about the 1480 test score?
Yes, it's just a simple story about a young man that grew up in Wichita, Kansas with a single mom. He was flunking out of his life, flunking out of school, hanging out with the wrong kids. His life's just going the wrong direction. And May of his junior year, he promises his mom he would take the SAT test. And if you guys remember when we were coming up and you take these tests, there's two sides to it. There's like the math and then like the language comprehension. And each side is worth 800 points. So it's 1,600 points total. So if you were to like miss zero, you get 600 points. And so this kid goes and takes a test and he gets his test results back and he scores a 1480. A 1480 means he's a genius. Here he is flunking out of his life, but he's a genius. So he goes and takes it to his mom, hands her the test results, and his mom says what most of our moms would have said to us. She goes, "Did you cheat?" He goes, "Mom, I did not cheat. This is real." She goes, "Man, my son, I had it wrong on him. He's a pretty bright guy." Well, when he realizes that he's pretty sharp and pretty bright, that he realizes that's his identity. He's a genius. He decides to change his behaviors and start going to class. Well, when he goes to class, he's not hanging out with the wrong crowd anymore. So he graduates from high school. His teachers realize, "Man, Franklin, we had it wrong on you. You're a genius." Graduates from junior college, goes to Wichita State, ultimately graduates from the Ivy Leagues with honors, and becomes an entrepreneur in the magazine industry, becomes one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country. You say, "Man, what a cool story. Here's a guy that was flunking out of his life, realized who he really was, which he's this genius, and he changed his whole life." And my friends, that's not the end of the story. So about 13 years later, he gets a letter in the mail from Princeton, New Jersey. And it says, "Mr. Pierce, we periodically review our test-taking policies and test-taking procedures. And the year that you took the test, you were one of 13 students that was accidentally sent the wrong test score. You didn't score a 1480. You scored a 740. And he said, "People have been telling me my whole life, Franklin, your life changed when you got that 1480 test score." And he said, "No, my life changed when I started acting like a 1480. And that's really the invitation for all of us, is to act as if, or to be, in other words, to be today, be the one you were born to be, and step into this full potential that you have."
That's awesome, man. I love that story. I probably heard it 5 or 6 times and never gets old. So I wanted to share one more thing with you about kind of lift others up and the whole podcast idea. So, whether you know this or not, you are a big credit for why I started this. And it was between you, John Maxwell, and Ed Milet, right? It's a good group of guys.
Man, I was going to say,
So
that's an honor to be with those guys.
that's right, man, good company. So we had 2 conversations over the years. One, I just called you when I was down. And that conversation was dream, struggle, victory, which we'll get into in a second. And the other one, I was just kind of confiding in you. It's like, man, I just don't feel like I'm a product guy, you know? I just don't get excited about products. And I mean, there's products I use every day, but I'm just never been the product guy. And you said, man, what we're doing here is so much bigger than just products, right? The game we're playing, the empire we're building. And my initial way I processed that was then, oh, it's about the business, right? Like, oh, this is about the business, not about the products. It's about building an empire and building businesses and helping people, become financially independent. And then I was months later, I was listening to this podcast with Ed Milet interviewing John Maxwell. And I want to read the note here so I don't mess it up. Man, and just for the audience that doesn't know, you have a pretty sweet link with John Maxwell. You guys have spent some time together and traveled the world together, and your son is now buddies with him, right? So it's just incredible because he is like the godfather, right, of personal development. So one thing he was saying in this podcast was he was saying that when you're growing, you're happy. When people are growing, they're happy. And significance or service to others is fulfillment. That's how we get fulfillment, right? So Tony Robbins said progress is happiness, but it sounds like John's saying growing is happiness, right? Same type of thing. Progress or growing is what makes us happy. And then serving others is what fulfills us. And at that moment, I thought back to our conversation, right? When you said it's a much bigger game than that. And I said, he wasn't talking about products or business. He was talking about serving others. He was talking
Serving
about
other people.
impact.
Yeah.
And it just clicked all at once. And I stayed up late that night and just wrote, this is what I wrote, actually. I'm going to share it with you guys. So I said, I'm going to combine personal growth, being a student and teachable and still learning, with helping and adding value to people. And this is another thing John said. If you're not growing, you can't keep adding value to people. You have to keep growing to add value. And then I wrote, I'm building an empire by combining growing myself and adding value to others. Every day I work on bettering myself by reading, listening, learning, being teachable. Then I turn around and add that value to other people by sharing through social media, podcasts, speaking engagements, and trainings. And then to simplify all that, I said I consume valuable, profound information and relay it in an impactful and empowering way to others. And so after listening to that podcast, after literally I'm cutting my lawn. I have an electric mower, right? So it's like quiet enough you can listen to a podcast.
Hmm.
And I heard that, and then your voice clicked in, and then I couldn't sleep that night. I was so on fire and excited. And
Man,
then
that's
life happened, and I just put all this off, right? Like, and I think there's a lesson there. Like when inspiration strikes, man, we got to take action. And life happened, and I put it all off. And then recently, I kind of came out of this just 4 year slump, and I said, wait, I have the formula, right? I know how to be happy and I know how to be fulfilled. And you could even build a business around that, right? So I just got to thank you, man, for helping inspire that thought, that paradigm shift. And that's why we're here, and that's why I'm sharing you with the world, man.
yeah, that's so powerful. Love
Yeah,
that. Really, really, really great stuff.
yeah,
Great epiphanies, and really admire you for taking action on it, and including writing those words and taking it from your head to your heart and then ultimately to paper and then getting into action. I think a lot of times we have those inspirations. So inspiration, to inspire, means to breathe life into it. That's what the word inspire means. It means to breathe life into it. And so sometimes we get inspired, or like life is breathed into us, but it kind of dies right there. We don't act on it. We don't get into action. So it's a great lesson, for all of us to get into action on the things that move us or inspire us.
absolutely. So the other conversation we had was dream, struggle, victory, which I probably shared this with, I don't know, a dozen people, since then, just because it's just such an awesome conversation, and the lessons within dream, struggle, victory. So do you want to give the crash course on that real quick?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just,
Awesome.
life is in three phases, right? There's dream, then there's struggle, then there's victory. It's just three simple phases. And the first lesson of the dream, struggle, victory is that they're all equal or commensurate to each other. So, for example, if you have a big dream, you've signed yourself up for a struggle that's equal to or commensurate to the size of the dream, and a victory equal to or commensurate to the size of the struggle. A lot of times what we want in life is kind of like a big, huge dream and a really, really, really small struggle, and then a big, huge victory. And it's just not how life works. It's just commensurate. It's equal to, it's like you're reaping and sowing. And what's interesting though is the first lesson is to dream big dreams. Like dream a dream that inspires you, and hopefully ultimately you dream a dream that inspires others. It's actually bigger than just enough to move you. Tony Robbins says people are not lazy, they simply don't have dreams that inspire them. So you want to dream a dream that's big enough to move you. The second thing though is just know that you've signed yourself up for a struggle that's commensurate. So in other words, it takes the time and the effort, and you got to go pay the price and go work the hours and actually go make it happen. Here's what I want you to know, those of you that are in the struggle section. Couple good pieces of advice that I learned through my those struggles that I've been through. First one is to take really good notes. And the reason why is because people will relate more to your struggles than they will your victories. It's like when you go through the struggle, people are going to be like, you went through that? Like you, like, oh my gosh, because somehow they think you're different. You're kind of this, you're a star. And so of course it worked for you. So take really good notes. Second thing is this: your story is not your struggle. Your story is your victory. So don't own the struggle story. We talk a lot about story or identity. Your story is not the divorce. Your story is not the bankruptcy. Your story is not the last 10 years of struggle and pain. The story is not the injury. The story is not the addiction. The story is how you overcame all that stuff and got to the victory. And so don't stop in this section. Don't stop in the struggle and start owning it and then become kind of a victim of the struggle. Also remember, my friends, the bigger the struggle, the bigger the story. The bigger the struggle, the louder the applause when you cross stage. Like when you get to that, in other words, if you're really going through it right now, you're really in the depths, man, you are writing an amazing story. This is going to be an epic, like standing ovation when you get across there, because people are going to say, how did you pull this thing off? And then the last thing that's so interesting about the victory is, besides to remain humble in victory, meaning you didn't get there by yourself, we're all products of the values of each other. So in other words, we all drive on roads we never paved, use an internet we never built. Like we all kind of work in this collective. Even your individual genius that you pull out, you still read books that you never wrote, kind of thing. We're able to pull from each other, the collective genius of each other. But here's the thing: is what happens. One of the biggest killers of success is success. So some of you right now, man, you've done well. You earn X amount of dollars, or you've succeeded at this area in your life, and maybe your fitness is in a good spot. but your marriage isn't where it needs to be, or your faith isn't where it needs to be, or your business should be at a whole different level. You've kind of lit off the gas, And so when you get to the victory, you want to then do what? You sign yourself to go up, to go right back through bigger dreams, dream big again, a dream big enough that it kind of scares you a little bit, fires you up, wakes you up early, and also, stresses you out. And then that will sign you up for a new struggle. You say, I don't want to go through a struggle. I'm in this victory section. You gotta go do this again. All the juice of life is going through that. It's that, to your point, it's that progress, and it's that value add and creation, and ultimately go fight, go create new victories. So dream, struggle, victory is a simple, 3-step phases of a way to think about it. So you don't curse the world when you're in the middle of the struggle, because you've signed up for a struggle equal to the size of your dream, and a victory equal to the size of your struggle.
Yes, that's awesome, man. I remember when you first taught that to me, it kind of showed me the framework. I just remembered, because what I tried to do is just keep signing up for the struggle without dreaming again. I'll tell you what, that's tough, right? And you
Yeah, your
talk
dream is
about
what gets you through the struggle, right? Just the dream of,
that's
like,
right.
what's possible, the dream of getting to the end. If you lose hope or lose the dream, I mean, you're never going to get through the struggle.
Yeah, you talk about James Lawrence, the Iron Cowboy, and talking about stacking reasons or stacking whys, and that's all part of the dreaming process, right? So the dream, it starts with dreaming, but even while you're going through the struggle, you got to keep stacking those reasons. Is that right?
For sure.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, you shared something kind of in at one of your low points, where you made two promises to yourself. You said, "I won't forget what it feels like to struggle," and then you said, "You'll wear yourself out trying to help other people to become successful." And so, I just wanted to bring that up because you're at a place right now where you're just breaking all kinds of records, launching this new business, this new empire, which I'm super proud of you, man, and had no doubt in my
Thank
mind
you.
that this is where it was going and beyond. So for you to take any time to hop on a new fledgling podcast is just it's just awesome. But when I heard you say this promise that you'll wear yourself out trying to help other people become successful, I was like, man, he's just doing what he said he's going to do, So big ups to you on that, man.
Well, listen, brother, I appreciate that. This morning I woke up early, and at 7:15 I drove to this little hotel and did an hour long training for this HVAC, like this HVAC, heating and air conditioning company. And to give you an idea, normally when I do a keynote, they do a kickoff each year for their company. They probably had maybe 30 to 35 of their employees there. And if you can imagine, HVAC workers are kind of a blue collar crew, right? It's definitely more of a blue collar crew. And, my normal keynote is tens and tens of thousands of dollars. I think they pay me like $400 or something like that. And I share this with you to say, my videographer said to me, he's like, why are you going to this at 7:15 in the morning, to an HVAC company for 33 blue collar workers, like what? He's like, for $400. He's like, I don't even get it. He's like, that's like you calling the HVAC company and saying, hey, will you come fix my heating and air? But, like charge me 1% of what, or whatever it is, of what you normally charge. He goes, I don't get it. He goes, I just would have told him no. And I thought a lot about it, and it's like, why do you do that? Why would you wake up early and go do that and do it way below what you'd normally charge? And it's the whole thing. And one answer is they're local business owners, in my local community, wanted to, to see if I can add value to them. But really, it's a fulfillment of those promises, like you said. It really is. It's like if you, Jim Rohn asked the question, if you can, should you? So in other words, if you can serve, if you can add value, if you can go support, should you? And his overall answer was yes, and I think mine is yes. Now, there's sometimes you can't do it. You can't please everybody. I'm not, you can't be a people pleaser. You can't be there. You can't be everything to everyone. But today I was able to make it happen, and so ran over there and did it. So I do my best to kind of stick to those promises.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you doing it today, man. So one thing I always love to ask, especially when I have one of my mentors on, is I like to get to know, my mentor's mentors, right? So like your mentor's books, lessons you learned along the way. And in preparing for this, listening to those different podcasts, in two separate podcasts I listened to, one you were hosting, one you were a guest, the name Nathan Ricks came up. And quite honestly, I consider myself a student of the business and of personal development, and I'd never heard of Nathan Ricks. And so I started digging into him, and I went back and found the Eric Worre, Nathan Ricks
Yep.
podcast. And there's a side story there I'll get into in a minute. But man, I mean, just from listening just to him talk for a little bit, he talked about, what makes network marketing different than anything else is the income lifestyle impact, right? So that was a big thing I took away. I was like, man. And then he said the three things that separate the successful is focus, commitment, and being consistent. And what I've recognized over the years is a lot of this goes back to Jim Rohn, right? And I think they were connected, right, through New Skin. But a lot of different coaches and leaders and owners are saying the same things. They just say it in a different way or share it in a different story. So, do you have a favorite Nathan Rick story, and who else are some of those mentors maybe I have or haven't heard of?
Yeah, Nathan, a lot of my career I modeled after him. I kind of I chased him. It was so interesting, Dusty, because at first I just would listen to him like on a DVD or on like a. I used to sneak into his conference calls on a Monday morning. Not every single Monday, but I would sneak in occasionally, get the passcode and listen in. I used to I snuck into some of his Super Saturday events. Like I just like in the back corner, and man, I just thought this because what I loved about Nathan was he not only was uh, I think he made like 70 or 80 million dollars in commissions in his business. But by the way, he ultimately became a self-made first generation billionaire. So he was just a beast. So one thing I admired is he made cash and he didn't just go blow it on a bunch of stupid stuff. He like made cash and then he built this huge real estate empire and so on. So I admired all that. But the thing I really admired about him is he was true to his faith. He was true to his family. He was true to his daughters. He was true to his wife. He was just a good man. So in other words, I admired that more than the cash. He was a good human. And sometimes, those dollars can be a little corrupting to people, or that exposure or that, that power can be a little bit corrupting. And it just wasn't. He was just a really, really, really great man. So I modeled him. For years. What was interesting, so check this out. I remember he became an actual mentor. I'm trying to remember how we even met. I'd have to think about how we even finally officially met. I remember getting on the phone with him. I was kind of like, not to like sound weird or something, but like I've like modeled you for years, dude. Like a lot of the reason I didn't quit was because of you. And he said to me once, we ultimately invested together. We invested millions of dollars together. So he became not just a like a mentor, like an actual mentor, but he became like a friend and kind of a partner in some of these business ventures and so on. So we became actual friends. I could call the guy, have dinner. And I remember we're on the phone once, and I was walking him through what was happening. One thing that I loved about talking with him is he could understand what I was going through at a level that it was like we could like pitch and catch at a level that a lot of folks couldn't they hadn't lived those exact same shoes, where in his case he had lived those plus more. And so we're on the phone once, and I was telling him about my income, what was happening with my business, and so on. This is probably about 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And he goes, well, he goes, you officially are earning more, like basically with my monthly commissions. He goes, you're officially earning more than I ever earned. And I remember just sitting on his phone. I was like, this is like someone. It'd be like Michael Jordan telling you that you score more points than him, or something like that. You're just like, what is happening? I couldn't even believe it, because he was untouchable to me. He was Superman. He ultimately passed. He passed about it was 2 years ago. He passed away. He was on his jet heading to the Rose Bowl. It was so surreal because my family landed at the Rose Bowl that day. We flew private. Had my wife and my kids. They all had their cute Utah gear on, and for the to go support the team. And we flew there private. Go to the Rose Bowl, and as they're doing like the flyover at the Rose Bowl, and they have the Goodyear blimp, and they have the F-16s, and they're doing the pageantry. My phone is just blowing up, and I look down. I'm like, all these people are calling me. I'm like, what is going on? So I look at my text once the national anthem, finishes, and they said Nathan Ricks, his jet crashed. I just was like looking at this like it's one of the most surreal moments of my life because to me, he was like Superman. It's like he would never die. He was just too strong. And so he was a great memory and a great example that even the strongest, even the Nathan Ricks, even the Superman, Marcus Aurelius says, memento mori, says to meditate on mortality, just to remind yourself this will not last forever. What are the things that really matter and are really important, and to focus on those things, your relationship with your faith, relationship with your family, the way you treat people, all that kind of stuff, the stuff that really matters, right?
Yeah.
And but he was, man, he was really, really a great man, great husband, father, and he was a really great mentor as well.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that. So I don't know if you know this, my son's a pilot. He soloed on his 16th birthday, and so flew a
Wow.
plane by himself on the day he turned 16,
Jeez.
and he turned 17 here on February 12th. And right around his birthday, depending on the scheduling, he'll have his private pilot's license. So, we're all about aviation over here, and so in looking at Nathan, I found his obituary and saw the story of the Embraer and what happened. And my son was reading the report and everything. But there was a quote in his obituary, and it says, a business partner attributed this Thomas Marsh quote to Nathan's character. It says, "Some men do not really live for honors or for pay. Their happiness is not in the taking and holding, but in the doing, the striving, the building, and the serving." And I was like, man, that is a strong quote to be attributed to you, huh? So
Yeah,
I
that
didn't
is
I didn't
Nathan
know the
too.
man, but because of your respect for him and because of a quote like that and some of the things I've read about him already, I'm excited to kind of dig into his legacy and see what nuggets I can pull out of there and what I can preserve.
Yeah, I mean, to that point of that last part of that quote, and to what we've talked about, even with why you're doing this podcast, Nathan didn't need to keep doing any of this stuff. He didn't need to work. I mean, he'd done it. He'd arrived. And my question to all of you listening is this: it's like, when do you just turn off? When do you just sit on your couch and chill out? And I can share with you from personal experience when you're uh, where you get to a point where you don't actually have to do the work for meaning to economically, you don't have to do it to like pay bills. Then you do ask yourself these kind of bigger questions of like, what do I want to do? What do I want to do with the rest of my life? And do I just want to sit here and just kind of watch Netflix and just hang out or call a friend or like whatever? And the truth is, oftentimes, unless you won the lotto or something like that, oftentimes what's gotten you to that point is that you like to serve people, like you like to create things, you like to add value. Like for me, those promises I made, and then also just this idea of like wanting to add value and wanting to like create things. Like I would feel like an unwise servant. If you remember the parable of the talents, there's three servants and they're given talents. Now the talents back then were like coins. So imagine one had one had two, one had five. And the master comes back. The one with five had done something with it, had gone out there and done something. So they turned the 5 to 10. The one with two turned the 2 to 4. They'd done something with it. The one with one ended up burying theirs because they were fearful they would lose it. And the story basically, lesson number one, we all got something. No one got zero talents. Like maybe you got five, maybe I got two, or maybe you got two and I only got one, but we all got something. So no one got left out. You have gifts, you have talents, your life matters. And then the second part though is that bearing it's not one of your options. In other words, not doing anything with it. There's what's called the law of use. If you don't what you don't use, you lose. And the reason, in my opinion, that is true, that it's not one of your options to bury your talents, is because, my friends, your gifts and talents weren't given to you for you. Your gifts and talents were given to you for the rest of us. And the way you give glory to the giver of the gifts is by going out and magnifying your gifts, like doing something with it, like expanding them and increasing them. And you do that by adding value and serving other people. So it's one of the things I admired about Nathan is, man, up until the very end, no kidding, he was serving people, adding value, showing up at a high level with good vibes to make humankind a better place. He was just a really special guy.
That's awesome. So you know how when you're like seeking information or wisdom and like something comes off from the side that maybe you don't see coming. So when I was listening to the Eric Worre Nathan Rick's podcast interview, I should say, um, it was like a long time ago, maybe like 2012 or something, and not like the studio that Eric Worre has now that I know
Yeah,
you've been
yeah.
to, multi-million-dollar studio, right? I think they were actually at Nathan's house,
At his
and
house. Yeah.
a couple minutes in, like a dog start barking, and he just
Yeah.
like goes up and says, "Sorry, I should have done it," and honestly, it like made me feel really good that I was like, both these guys are rock stars, right? And I'm in the corner of my basement right now, and this is not studio quality, it's not multi-million-dollar setup. I bought this table off of Marketplace for $10, right? But I was like, hey man, everybody starts somewhere,
Of course.
and look at these guys. They're just powering through, and both just did amazing things. And I
I love
remember
that.
actually going to Eric Worre's GoPro event 2012, in Minnesota. And then we went out on Lake Minnetonka on his boat. And at that time, there was only probably 100 people in the room, and it was awesome. But yeah, that was one side story. And the other one I wanted to share was when you were interviewing Dan McCormick. This happens to me a lot. It's not necessarily like what's being said, but it's the picture that it paints, right? And so Dan was crediting you for a time when he was kind of stuck in his life, and you called him and invited him out to speak or to hang out with you in a group. And what he said was it helped him jump off the plateau. And I don't know what it was about him saying that, but it just painted this picture, right? Because when I thought about plateaus in the past, like you're climbing this mountain and you hit this plateau and then you got to figure out how to keep climbing. And I never did it occur to me that you jump down or climb down to go up. But
Hmm.
I'm telling you, it like painted this picture for me where it's like, man, I've hit these plateaus, and sometimes you got to go back to find the route up, right? Sometimes like we were meant to hit that plateau because without getting to that plateau, we would never would have found another route to keep climbing and never would have went through that struggle that we're now equipped to lead other people through. But it was just cool because it just painted this picture for me, and so I wanted to thank you for that because you helped him jump off that plateau, and then he shared the story, and it painted this picture for me that I think I could probably build into a framework for training.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, Dan's such a special guy. He just wrote a book called I think it's about I am statements. I think it's called Awakening the I Am, something like that. I'm trying to think of the exact name, but it's just such a powerful book with this idea of the power of your I am statements and your updating your identity. It's one of the chapters in my book is on updating your identity. Part of the framework I walked these HVAC guys through today was on identity, and I am statements and you are statements and stuff. And so it's it's really powerful work to be able to recognize who you really are. It's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this, like this idea that you are the one. When you realize that, you realize who you really are, you're like, yo, I got to step it up a little bit. And so Dan is one of the most happy, positive, kind. He is the real deal. He is as positive and as upbeat as you will ever meet anybody. You'll never meet Dan on a down day. He is just a special guy. I mean, literally, I'll call Dan and be like, Dan, how are you doing? And he'll say, no, I'll say, what's up, Dan? What's up? And he'll say, well, my attitude, my spirits or whatever. I can't even remember what his thing is, but just my attitude, my spirits, and my perspective. What's going on with you? And you're kind of like, I'm doing great too. You want to like step it up a little bit when you talk to him.
That reminds me of something else from your book. You cited a study talking about the power of our words, right? So, like, thoughts have power, and then words have exponentially more power once you verbalize that thought. And negative thoughts and negative words are even more so, right? So, it's so important to not only guard our thoughts, but truly guard our words. Is that right?
Yeah. So your thoughts, you can learn to control your thoughts, but that's like some next levels in personal growth where you actually like learn how to control your thoughts because you guys know how it is. Sometimes we just think stupid stuff. You just have random thoughts and goofy thoughts and so on. I first learned the power of words when I was 15. It was when my dad hired a trainer for me. The guy comes walking across the gym. He's 6'2". He's 300 pounds, and he's 10% body fat. So if you know what that looks like on a human, I mean, the dude has 22-inch arms, massive calves, huge thighs, huge shoulders, like block out the sun. His name is DeMarco. He's got big arm tattoos all the way across his chest, all the way down his other arm. He's got an earring. He's got a bandana on. I was like, oh crap, what has my dad got me into? And he shakes my dad's hand. He shakes my hand. He goes, stand up. I stand up. He goes, get your shoulders back. I'm like, get my shoulders back. And he said, I got 3 rules. He said, rule number 1, he said, he said, rule number 1 is never be late. I thought, yes, sir. He goes, disrespectful to your dad, disrespectful to me. He said, never be late. He said, rule number 2, he said, don't come to the gym with rat breath. Rat breath? What does that even mean? He goes, yeah. He goes, I don't want to be 15-year-old kid. You come to the gym and you breathe all over me as I spot you. He goes, make sure you brush your teeth and have some gum and a Tic Tac. And I thought, that's pretty good advice. And he goes, rule number 3, he said, I never want to hear you say you can't do something.
Hmm.
And I thought, okay. He said, you have a conscious and a subconscious mind, and your subconscious will believe whatever you tell it. And he said, so if you say, I can't lift the weight, or I'm not strong enough, or this is too much for me, or I don't have what it takes, he goes, your conscious will believe it. And so I remember a couple sessions into it, he would take the pin in the stack and the weight stack and put it lower. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, there is no way I can lift that much weight, right? But I wouldn't say that out loud. And guess what happened, my friends? I lifted the weight. Then he'd add more weight onto the plate or onto the bar, and I'd lift the weight. And I learned this lesson to not only not speak negative, but I would actually speak positive. I'd say to myself, or even say it out loud, I'd say, I got this, like I own this weight. Well, I took that into business, and same thing, you're at these just critical times in a business's, cycle. It's kind of a do or die, live or die situation. And I would say to our partners, guys, we're smart. We can figure this out. We're well intentioned. What questions are we not asking? We're going to get through this. There's a bright days ahead. Like, you cast some positive vision. So Christine Porath, both at Georgetown and Harvard, she did studies where she said your what's called neutral or positive words. Your positive words. Like, I got this. I can do this. I'm strong. I'm resilient. Your positive words are 10x, 10 times more impactful than the thought. So in other words, when you think it, cool, but when you speak it out loud in a positive way, it's 10 times more powerful. Well, here's the contrary. She says your negative words, so like, I'm an idiot, I'm a loser, this is never going to work for me, that kind of thing. Your negative words are 40 to 70 times more impactful than the thought, the negative. So 10x more impactful on the positive, 40 to 70 times on the negative. There's old Bible verses that say that life and death is in the power of the tongue. So this research kind of would validate that old Bible wisdom. And Trevor Moawad wrote a book kind of detailing a lot of this, but he talked about when he was hired for Alabama football, Nick Saban hired him. And he would bring him in, and they eliminated things like the player saying, I'm too hot, I'm tired, I'm thirsty, I'm sore. They got rid of all that. And you can't always control your thoughts. Your thoughts, sometimes you just think thoughts, but we always can control. We are always in control of our words. And you can start speaking life into your future versus kind of death into your future. So I want to encourage you, and this is what I was encouraging these HVAC guys of today, which is to watch your words. Make sure that you say, you know what, I'm only going to speak positive. I'm only going to let positive come out of my mouth.
It's awesome. So I know we only have about 5 more minutes, and I wanted to get to this. So um, turns out we have a shared love for Mark Batterson here, Chase
Yeah.
the Lion. I've read everything Mark's written. He's a pastor in National Community Church out of DC, and I think we probably both like him because he was like athletic and like has all these stories that we could probably relate to. But you have an amazing house out there, man. I got to get out there one day. And can you tell the story of what you had, the mural you have there, and what that means to you?
Yeah. So when you come out here, bring your wife and kids. I'll walk you out. So we have an attached. It's kind of like a fun barn. So it's got like a basketball court, and then it's got like a rock wall and a foam pit and a couple of trampolines, that whole thing. And my girls will dance in there for their dance practices, and my son does his basketball practices out there, that whole thing. So I did a mural. I had a guy, literally, dude's from Baltimore. He's the most interesting guy. He's been a police officer for like 20 years. He's still young. He's like 38 years old. Started when he was 18. Been a police officer for like 20 years. He's got his retirement, but he's an artist, and he's like this kind of dichotomy of a guy. 'Cause he's a police officer, and doesn't look like an artist. But anyway, he flies around the country and paints these incredible murals. He literally came to my house, and like we got like this huge scaffolding, and he like painted this massive mural. And each it's like a landscape, so each part of it tells a story. But we have this big, huge lion, this huge African male lion, that's kind of over the hoop, and it's really cool. And a couple quick things is when you walk into the gym, it's the first thing that catches your eye for sure. And the eyes of the lion are always staring at you, no matter which way you look. You can go any part of the gym, and the eyes always see you. And I got it from that book. And the idea that Mark wrote in that book is an idea called Chase the Lion. And his idea was the lion's the dream. And so what he said is that most people, when he tells a story about a guy named Benaniah is this old Bible character that the story says that he chased a lion into a pit on a snowy day. And you say, who do you know that chases lions into pits on snowy days? And typically, we don't know a lot of people that do that. And what does that mean? It means it makes Benaniah rare. And think of it this way, my friends. Anything that's rare is more valuable. So a diamond that's rare is more valuable. A friendship that's rare is more valuable. A person with courage is rare. That's more valuable. And people who chase lions into pits on snowy days, they're rare. Anything that's rare is more valuable, right? Well, this story, he tells the story because he says that most people, when they hear the roar of the dream in their heart, the roar of the calling on your life, hopefully you hear it through, you felt it or heard it and had those impressions even through this podcast. He said what most of us do is we either run from the roar or we ignore the roar versus run to the roar. We chase the dream. We chase the lion into pits on snowy days, you know? And so I want my kids to remember when every time they see that lion means even though it's staring you down, your dreams are always calling to you, being like, do you have the courage to come chase? And anyone that has courage is rare. And so you want to be a person of courage and a person that really goes for dreams, goes for goals, gets back up when you get knocked down, and doesn't stop until you go make it happen.
That's awesome, man. Well, I know we're up against the clock here. I want to be respectful of your time. I appreciate you coming on. So, one more thing, and then I got a question to ask you. So, the one more thing is I just need people to check this book out, man. Be the One. And what I would recommend is buy the book and buy the Audible. So, I buy the book, and we don't have time to go into it now, but I highlighted the whole back of it, which is win both races, right? Like I love that concept, and we'll get into that another time. But the reason why I also love the Audible is because you do these asides, right? Like there's things you've learned since you wrote it, and there's these other things you share, and so it's pretty cool to get that extra perspective. So definitely check out the book, Be the One. You will not be disappointed. You will share it with other people because it is a life-changing book. And I want to give you a huge congrats. Just on, I know you had a big milestone the other day, like 100,000 orders
Yeah.
with your new company, Make Wellness, which is just absolutely incredible, man. You're crushing it. And I know you're just going to bless so many people with that the opportunity and the products over there. And so I'll give you the last word here. And then while you're giving the last word, I want to put a little pressure on you. All right. So I did this to my last guest. I said, who comes to mind when you think of lifting others up that we could have here in the studio that you said, man, it would just be awesome for them to share with the Lift Others Up community? Is there anybody that comes
Yeah,
to
the first
mind that?
person that comes to mind is John Maxwell. Whether we can get John in here or not, remains to be seen. But one of the things about John that's really special is he says that like his mission statement is that he adds value to leaders who multiply value to others. And I've been with John. I've traveled around, in some cases around the world, in Costa Rica and so on. And it is real. This whole like he adds value, it's real. It's not just like an ism or a saying or like a company, on a printout. And that to me is lifting others up. Like John Maxwell lifts others up, and he does it by adding value. So it's a real special, it's a real special thing to add value to other people that multiply value to others.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for that. So I'll wait for that call for you to help book John Maxwell on the Lift Others Up podcast. Dude, that'd be pretty incredible, huh? That'd be like right next to having Justin Prince on. So Justin, man, appreciate you so much, man. Keep crushing it. And I just want to end by saying this. I have different mentors in my life and different people I look up to. Obviously, nobody's perfect, but what I look at when I'm looking for a mentor is like, what areas of their life can I model, right? And so we're about the same age. Actually, I'm a little bit older than you. So I turned 45 in February. You're 44, right?
Yeah, in September for me.
Gotcha. Yeah. So we're about the same age. You got a family, beautiful wife, beautiful family, building an incredible business, but putting people first and all those ways, man, fitness, all those things. I look up to you as an inspiration, and I just appreciate you, not only living a life that's worth modeling, but sharing that with me. So I appreciate you so much, man. Thanks for being on the podcast today.
Appreciate that, brother. Proud of you. Keep rocking, and really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, brother. Talk to you soon.